Welcome. Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining me on another episode of The Art of Comic Writing. Thank you so much for coming on. I was vibing off of that beat at the beginning. Big shout out to Mr. Morgan Quaid. He did an incredible job producing that track. Thank you so much, sir. I appreciate you very, very much. I am your host, Jorge Medina. That's George with a J. And we're going to be talking to a writer today, and we're going to be talking to writers throughout the time of this show, where we are going to be getting, insight on writing and the do's and don'ts, some things that they've tried that might have helped them out, some things that maybe, they wish they had done. And we're going to be talking about that kind of stuff throughout the episodes that I'm going to be putting out. And if that's something that you will be interested in, or you think somebody will be interested in, please subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and share it. Share it out with that person that you think would benefit the most out of a show like this. Okay. And also don't forget to hit the notification bell so that you don't miss any of these informative shows. And I want to start off by giving a big shout out to my sponsor today. Thank you so much to Gig. That is globalindiegroup.com. If you are stuck and you have an idea and you're like, oh man, I want to create this comic, but I don't know what to do, go to globalindiegroup.com. They will link you up with some of the best indie creators, writers, editors, podcasts where you can promote your stuff. So check that out. If you are stuck for an idea and don't know where to start, go there. Search for, help on there. If you're a writer, obviously, if you're an artist or anyone like that who's looking to collaborate, go to globalindiegroup.com and check that out. Go there, sign up. It's $5.99 a month. And at checkout, you're going to get a discount for putting in the code writing. So make sure that at discount, you put the promo code writing for a discount. Thank you so much for listening. And thank you so much, Gig, for sponsoring the show. All right. Let's get down to business, guys. Let's get down to business. Let's talk a little bit about comic books. Anyone who has ever attempted to create, publish their own comic book knows that it's hard. It is hard. I've tried. I've done it. And it is a daunting task. It just is. Now, there are tools, and there are a lot of tools available now to make it easier from when I started. I'm an old man. So there are tools now to make it easier, but it doesn't mean that you have to put less work into it, because in order to make a comic book successful, you put in a lot of hours of work. Now, imagine starting a publishing company, not just a comic book, but a publishing company. Okay, my guest this week, he's done that. He's done just that. And through some serious guerrilla marketing, I mean, the man takes these nomad tours, which I think are awesome, where he goes and to promote his book. He has managed to find some success, and we're going to be talking to him and asking him about what that success looks like. All right. Plus, we're going to be giving him a writing prompt, as I like to do as a partying gift, for him to work on after the show's over. So, without further ado, please welcome a person I have had the pleasure to get to know very well. He is the owner of the independent publishing house, ASAP Imagination. He is also a writer, an entrepreneur. He's a man of mystery and many talents. I think he was at one point a stand-up comedian, and is an all-around incredible guy. Let's say hello to Mr. Paul Hayden, aka Haydes.
Hey,
There he
man.
is.
Hey, dude.
There
Thanks
he
for having
is.
me on, man. This is awesome. Great show.
Oh, yes. Thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate you,
Of course,
Hades,
man.
which is what we're gonna be going by. Hey, listen, that really has stuck, huh?
Yeah. Yeah. An initial joke, and I think it's 2 years now. 2 years later, that's it.
Listen,
It's who I
we're
am,
gonna be
man.
yeah, no, we're gonna be talking about a lot today.
Mhm.
We obviously, for those who maybe have never seen this show, what I like to do is I want to deep dive into writing. I feel like a lot of podcasts out there, you know, cater to the artist when it comes to comics, but
Mm.
very little is done for the writers, right? So that's what I want to kind of to do with on this show, in the art of comic writing, is I wanted to talk about the writing process, because it's tough. It's a tough one. It's not
Mhm.
easy to sit there and do all that. So we're going to be talking about that, like I mentioned at the beginning. So I'm going to ask you some questions. We're going to have a topic for today, which is success, right? Is how to find success in writing and publishing. And you've done that, and I think you've done that. You've been busting your butt to do that. So I appreciate
Right,
you
man.
doing that. And then I'm going to leave you with a little writing prompt, and we'll talk about that when the time comes. But let's get right to it. Why don't we jump right into it? Okay, we're going to talk about how to find success as an indie publisher and writer. But before we do that, let me ask you a couple of questions. You've been writing for I don't know how long, right? But we always have to start somewhere, as far as
Mm.
like when you sit down in front of your computer. And when you do that, when you sit down to write, other than maybe, the title of the story that you're about to write, what is the first thing you write down?
For me, because I have like jumbles of ideas in my head, I really like to find either a catchy title or a phrase, something that is going to embody the story, something that's going to grab. It's that initial grab, isn't it? That's what I like. It's, if you walk past and you see a book cover, it could just have a simple phrase on it. But if it's a phrase that just like bang, you go, I must have. It's that kind of thing. So it's either a phrasing or it's a title, something that punches it, but also makes sure it stays within the narrative of what I'm about to kind of go ahead and write. Because I'm one of those people that when I come up with ideas, I have the beginning and I have the end, and I need to flesh out the middle. So the beginning starts with a pop.
Interesting. So you start with like that, whether it's a title. What would you say is like your favorite, I guess, title or that thing, that first thing that popped into your mind? Till now, what is your favorite one? And I know this was just, I'm just thinking because you kind of sparked that interest.
Yeah. Well, it's like when you look at comic book titles in particular, you're always going to know the name. And so the first one that if I always think what always comes to my mind is Batman Nightfall. Again, it was just, it was obviously written as Night with a K, and instantly makes you go, oh, wait a minute, and again, like Watchmen, it's just when you think of other superhero stuff and you think, Justice League and X-Men, and then you go, Watchmen, what?
Right.
So even if you're not a fan, it still makes you go, huh? So
what is that?
whether it pops or whether it raises some form of mystery, I think that is a great place to start because you're pulling people in.
I agree, man. And I struggle with that sometimes, like with the
Mhm.
title of my story. Sometimes, because sometimes even for me, like I'll have an idea in my mind, right? Not even a title yet, just an idea, and maybe I'll have a character, and then I'll start
Mhm.
writing there. But it's that the title and the title is so important, which is interesting that you say that you start with that because it is important, right? It's like what's
Yeah.
going to capture the audience, what's going to make them say, "Hey, I want to check that out. I want to see what that is," right? So now, all right, so let's talk a little bit about when you're writing for for an audience, let's just say, and I use the term target audience in this
Yep.
case. What is your viewpoint on target audiences? Do you write with one in mind, or do you typically just write for you? How do you deal with that? 'Cause, you want to sell the book, obviously, right?
Yeah.
What is your viewpoint on that?
So because growing up as a comic book fan, there within the genre of comic books, there's so many sub genres. And yes, you've got your sci-fi and your fantasy and so on and so on and so forth. And it's like if whichever one you pick, you will appeal to someone, because that's falls within that part. But when I write, yeah, I'm like a 50-50, half selfish, half I'm sure they like it because I do, kind of attitude. And again, it's like the majority of us will pay homage to something. So you'll pay homage to something that appealed to you, and in it appealing to you, it obviously appealed to thousands and hundreds of thousands and maybe even millions of other people across, the history of comics. So I think it's one of those things where I'm pretty even on it. There are things that I'd love to see, but also because comics, you have your issues that come out. Also pay attention to your market. as well. If something works over another, and you've got to ask yourself why is something selling better? So pay attention. Because that's the thing. Comics. If you write a book and it's a standalone book, fine. But if you've got a couple of titles out and one of them is picking up and flying, why? Is it a character? Is it a storyline? Is it the genre? So I'd say start with 50-50, but pay attention to your audience.
I agree, man. I agree. I think we, like you said, and you used the word selfish, and it's true. I think a lot of writers and creators, we are selfish when it comes to what
Oh
we
yeah.
want to write, what we want to create. And it's okay, like you said, it's just that 50-50, right? It's okay to
Mm.
be that way because it all starts with an idea, something that you're interested, you want to talk about, you want to tell. But when you're producing this thing, you want to make sure that, I say make sure, but I don't know, you want to make sure. But if you're looking to sell this thing, you want to make sure
Mm.
that it's marketable, that it's something that can sell. And I've had this conversation, and we've had this conversation before,
Mm.
um, where it's a thing of, the term all ages, right?
Yeah.
When we deem a book all ages, that's very vague. And I truly believe that you need to narrow that thing down. You need to
Mm.
narrow it down. What is,
Great.
because what does all ages mean, right? It could mean different things for different people. And as especially when you're writing something for a younger audience, you got to be mindful of what the parents are buying for their
Yeah.
kids and what they deem all ages. So I agree with you. I think there is a 50-50. It's tough though. It's tough. It's tough because
It,
you know.
it is. It is. But I think having 50-50 and having that level of selfish means that you are going to write with more passion because that's what you want to do, and that'll come out in your writing. So you'll find, because sometimes it can happen organically.
Yeah,
We've certainly had some titles that have happened purely by accident.
yeah,
Because something appealed, and we went, well, okay, let's roll with this.
mhm,
you know but then again, you write selfishly because, hey, I love this genre, I love this character. But because you write with such passion, then you automatically start to find people who connect with it. So I don't think there's anything wrong in the selfish
right.
aspect of it,
Yeah,
because if you don't write what you love, it will show.
I agree. I think you definitely do have to write what you love. And a lot of people think, oh, write what you know, and it's not necessarily writing what you know, but it's definitely writing what you love. I think, and
Mm.
I think that's a big part of it. That's a big part of it. Now, with all of these things that you have to think about when when you sit down to write, target audiences, oh, what am I going to write? Is the title catchy? Is that going to grab them? When you think about writing, or even after you write, do you feel energized or do you feel exhausted by it all?
It can depend. Like it is dependent on certain things. So sometimes when you'll get, because again, if you're fitting your comic into like 22 pages and stuff like that, and but your brain's going, no more, damn it, and you kind of go, that's for issue 2, stop it.
Hmm.
Because for me personally, when I'm writing a comic, I do like the consistency of the comics being the same length.
Yeah.
Whether you can be a page out here and there, but sometimes that can be frustrating.
Hmm.
But I think whether you're writing a book or an issue or anything like that, but if to put the end or to be continued, especially to be continued,
Hmm.
that's the best. Yeah, the end is fantastic,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
to say to be continued is
Hmm.
such it's that kind of carrot to a donkey
Yeah.
kind of aspect. Yeah, that's really energizing.
Yeah. 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 So you do feel energized. You do end up
Yeah,
feeling
yeah, but
energized
I think
throughout the
there's
day.
waves throughout
Yeah.
as you're
Okay.
working through it. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. So there are times where you're like, "Oh man, I can't wait to do it." And there are times where like, "Oh my God, this is like, what am I going to do? What am I going to write? Like, is this gonna?" I
yeah.
think for me, part of the exhausting part of it, again, we have to get over this. I think as writers is, are they going to like it?
Oh
Like,
yeah.
is this going to be something that people are going to want to read? Will
Mm,
they flip that page? Especially when it's something like prose, and I think prose is some of the hardest, like things to write. A prose is
mm,
something very, prose is very hard to write. I
yeah.
feel like it's very tough. As opposed to maybe comic writing, because I don't know. I mean, and then maybe I shouldn't have this thing, but I feel like there is a safety net in the artist when you're writing
For
a
sure.
comic. You know, like you don't have to describe everything to make them flip that page. You know what I'm
Mm.
saying? You don't. So I think that's a plus. That's a plus when it comes to
I'd,
comic writing.
yeah, no, I would agree with that. And the other thing for me is um, structure, because you structure it
Mm,
completely differently for
hmm.
pros, and it's much, it's much more of a lonely aspect. If you're working with an artist and you have that kind of collaborative thing, when you're working as a novelist, or like, so I've written, I've had a book of poetry out. I did the anthology with L.A. Cunningham, but even writing the anthology, because she's in Canada, I'm in the UK, and so when you're writing on your own, you're just typing away,
Hmm.
and you do kind of get in your own head.
Yeah.
So one of the biggest things that I'd say to any writer watching this, find your community, and every time you feel like you're dipping,
Hmm.
one of us is going to know what you're going through. Give us a
Yeah.
shout. We
Yeah.
all know. We've all been
Yeah.
there.
I agree. I mean, I think when you think about that advice, it's almost like for people who like to work out and go to the gym, it's a lot
Yeah.
easier to work out with a buddy than it is to
Yeah.
work out alone. And some people can work out alone, but it's so much easier when somebody's there pushing you
Oh
to
yeah.
work out.
Yeah.
You know, it's just so much easier to do that, with
Mm,
somebody else sometimes. And that's why communities are so important. And
yeah.
you know, now, Paul, how do you define success in writing?
I would say the minute you're putting pen to paper or fingers to keyboard,
Hmm.
that's the beginning of success.
Huh.
And the reason that I say this is because there's so many people who, just touching on the subject that we've got there, they may have imposter syndrome, they may have writer's block, they may have all of the negatives that could come with it. If you write down one sentence on a day that you're feeling super low, success. If you write down one page on a day that you didn't think you could get a line out, it's a success. And I think, in terms of, yes, being published and being on shelves and selling, fantastic. But if you want to get down to like the core of writing, pen to paper, finger to keyboard, right there, that's your success. Because I've had days where certainly I've gone, nothing's going on in my head, but I've written a sentence, or I've written a page of script for something, whatever it is. And then all of a sudden I feel a bit better, and then the next day I might do a bit more and a bit more and a bit more, and you're constantly adding to the ladder to get yourself, so every rung is a success.
Yeah.
People think you've got to get to the top of the ladder and it's success, but no, every step is a success. Keep going.
I like that, man. I like that. Fingers to keyboard.
Yeah,
I like that.
yeah,
I
yeah,
like that. Yeah, that's for
yeah,
that's for the Gen Z and the young people out there.
yeah, 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 yeah.
For us, it used to be just pen to paper. Now it's fingers to keyboard. That's
Yeah,
brilliant. But no,
yeah.
that's really good advice, Paul. And I think when you said that, I wasn't expecting that, because obviously I didn't know what you were going to answer, but there is so much truth to that, because I think we give up before we even start writing. It just becomes too hard, right?
Yeah.
It's like, we get caught up on that. Oh, that first sentence, doesn't sound good at all, and so we just stop. We don't even
Yeah.
bother. But being able to write anything on a piece of paper, whether it's good or bad. I mean, there's stories about, what was it? I think Stephen King threw out the manuscript for, was it Carrie? Maybe, I think. And
Mm.
his wife actually took it out of the garbage and submitted it for him. And boom, he's Stephen King now. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
he
yeah, yeah.
didn't even think that was good enough. And going to think our stuff is good enough. Never gonna, because of the imposter syndrome we talked about. But
Yeah.
if, like you said, if you just write it down, you're ready. You're already on the right track. And I guess that is, and you're right, that is success. That is
Yeah. I
success,
know,
man.
for sure. Yeah, yeah. I think
Absolutely.
it's the best way. It really is. I've been very lucky in terms of the community
Mhm.
that I've had, and yeah, I've like I say, I've had those days, and it's also that thing of what would you say to someone else who was in your shoes. So when I have those days, because the thing is, we're all of us, whether it's again you know saying imposter syndrome, but we're more self-critical than we're critical of others. You know, if you were having a day and saying nothing's coming out, I've got writer's block, I don't know what this is. You know, my advice would be just let's put one word out, and then one word will follow another, and then you've got a sentence. And but if I was having that conversation with me, I'd be going, "You're an idiot. You can't write anything." You know, so it's people become self-critical, but the minute you can listen to the advice you'd give others, to me, that's another success. It's another because you step in to where you'd help someone else. Sorry, so help yourself. Great.
Yeah. No, absolutely, absolutely. And now, listen, I know that you've been publishing,
Mm.
and you have a publishing company called ASAP Imagination, and you've been doing this for about the last 2 years, right? Because I think it started during the
Yeah,
pandemic,
yeah.
2020.
2020, August 2020 was when we launched. Yeah,
Wow, August 2020. So you're going on 3 years this summer. three
yeah.
years of this, and I know because I follow you on Instagram, and I suggest anybody watching follow Haydes on Instagram, and on all of the social networks. But you have this thing called the Nomad Tour, right? Where
Mm.
you kind of like so talk to us a little bit about what the Nomad Tour is, and then I'll ask you the question I want to ask you.
So the Nomad Tour started because of cabin fever. As a writer, whether you're working from home or in an office, you have the same four walls and so on and so forth. And sometimes, and I don't know if you can tell from my complexion, but I've got good Irish reflective skin. Sometimes you need to get out there with the humans. And so what I decided to do was go and visit another city, and you know I contacted the comic book shops that were kind of in and around it, and then I went down south, and I went to the coast, and I visited comic book shops. And what I do is I catalogue my journey from the first train I might jump on to all of the shops that I then go and visit. And it's an old pound the pavement, you
Love
know
it.
kind of have a walk round and see people, especially after 2 years of when we were in the pandemic and things like that. It's nice to get out there, and you can phone the shops for sure, but when you're in front of them, it's a different story because you connect with them on a personal level. You can connect with them on a people level. And I take some samples with me, and I take some freebies, and I just talk geeky stuff with them. And yeah, it's great. And I've recently, the last couple of weeks, come back from Scotland, which was the first time I've never been to Scotland.
Mm,
Amazing place. Um, yeah, I visited three cities while there, and again, for me, a success because Forbidden Planet Glasgow took on all of our titles.
yeah.
So very, very happy with that. And I'm in talks with some of the other shops now to see what kind of stock they want. So yeah, it's been brilliant.
Yeah. No, and that was going to be actually part the question for me was what have you done to make what you're doing successful? And I think the answer is hitting the pavement, doing something about it, right?
Yeah.
Like you talk about fingers to keyboard. You going out there and saying to these comic book shops, "Hey, I have books. Do you want them in your store?"
Mm.
That's the key, right? That's the key to doing something to make yourself successful. Now, are there any, I guess, are there any tips that you can give maybe other, writers or even creators who want to do something like this that have worked for you as far as like just do you call these people up, set them up and say, I'm coming down? Or are you just kind of like cold calling, just showing up at their store? Here I am, take my stuff. What are some of the things that you're doing to make what you're doing in that sense successful?
So what I do with the majority, I'll ring ahead, and say, because I might catch them on a particularly busy day, and so I go, some random bearded pale guy walks in and goes, I've got comics. They're going, so have we. Um, so you kind of think, so I'll plan ahead. But what I'll do is I keep it fairly vague. It's like within the next few days, can I come in and see you? I don't book an appointment. It's like, is that okay? And then if there's I found a couple of little gems that I wouldn't have necessarily seen. I was on the way to one in Glasgow, and happened to just turn a corner, and then there, because we do prose books as well, there was an indie bookshop that I hadn't spotted when I was on that kind of Google mission. So I just popped in, spoke to them. Absolutely lovely people. We swapped details. I took some pictures while there. They made me tea.
Wow.
They were the best. No offense to the other shops, but they made me tea. I love tea, but no, it was great. But I sat down and I had a chat with them, but it wasn't like hard sales, and that's what I appreciate from this, because it's a
Yeah.
creative thing that we do.
Mhm.
I'm not selling a car, I'm selling, people's ideas. I'm selling, obviously my own ideas as well, but people's, you don't want to get too kind of cheesy about it, but this what I'm selling is coming out of people's heads. That's a lot. That means a lot, because it's coming out here and it's coming out here, and it's like, these are people's passion projects. You can't talk about them with a they're great. Buy them. You can't. You can't hard
Yeah.
sell them. So it's great because you do then connect with people. And then the other thing that I've found is a lot of people who work in these places, whether they're comic book shops or indie bookshops or whatever, good percentage of them are either wanting to create or have also created their own thing.
Mm.
So you can then make a great connection that then goes on to become a friendship and things like that. It's brilliant.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's funny because like, so you're obviously, on the other side of the world from myself here in the States.
Mm,
And it's interesting that you say that, because I think that that's the common denominator when it comes to some of these shops. I think a lot of us think of comic book shops as like these people who hate indies, who do not want to bring
mm,
them into the store. And there may be some who feel like, well, an indie comic's not going to sell in my store, and I'm trying to make money. I'm trying to keep the lights on. So maybe I'm
sure.
not going to take these. So we got to take that into consideration. But like you said, and even here, a lot of these comic book shop owners also have dreams of, maybe some of them are writers, even the people working behind the counter, some of them are writers, some of them
Hmm.
are this. So when you walk into these places and connect with them on that level, that'll make a big difference. Then you coming in there and saying, hey, you got to buy these books just
Mm,
because it's Hades and you're gonna love them. Like, I
yeah, yeah.
think that there's gotta be a, yeah, I don't, it's not a sales, I don't think you need to be a salesman like that. I think that part of it is just connecting, just
Yeah,
connecting. do,
yeah.
do you do you walk in there with like a pitch, or is it, or maybe do you show them the book and then they flip through it and say, oh, I like this? How does that part of it work when you're walking into these shops like this?
I never really have a pitch in mind,
Mm,
because I love what I do. So if I don't speak genuinely about it, then it shows, I think. You know,
mm,
I many moons ago, before I was less grey than this, but I used to work in fashion. You know, you sell things to people, and you're selling clothes, and seasons change, and so on and so forth. And as a salesperson as well, you're also pushed to make. I was a buyer, so you're pushed to make decisions because you know that you can push that out there. Whereas with this, it's different. Not that I didn't believe in what I was doing then, but I truly believe in these stories, in these people, and if I don't say that from the heart, then I think it shows. I think it can come off as cold. But one of the things I wanted to touch upon what you said there, though, is
mhm,
with some places where they, about indies, I've certainly had this, and what I will say to anyone who's thinking of going to comic book shops as well is, if you have an issue one of something that you want to take to a comic book shop, be sure to have a plan for issue two,
right. Yeah.
because one of the things that I found is I've certainly had this conversation with many an owner, is they struggle to invest, because the problem is, if there's no plan for issue two, or if there's nothing that can say this is going to happen, there's no consistency, there's going to be upset customers for them, not for you.
Right.
So
Right.
the one thing that I had, particularly in one shop that I went into, and it was so great. I mean, it was, when you go, I don't have a sales pitch, but I'm ready. Was the guy was like, well, look, I don't, these are great, but I don't have any, you've got to have issue twos lined up. Bow, 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 bow. Oh, look, it's my issue twos. And he's like, well, what plans have you got moving forward? And I was able to say, we've got this, we're doing this, we're doing this, and proving it and saying,
Right.
I'm in this for the long haul. I'm in this for forever, hopefully. But I do think, yes, that's the bump that you'll come up against, is that someone will turn around and say, it's an issue 1. I don't want an issue 2 in 8 months. Because it won't sell. So yeah, consistency is one of the things that again, this creativity versus consistency thing. It's creativity can come when it comes. You shouldn't try and force it, but also we have deadlines. You've got to do issue 2s. You've got to think ahead. You've got to plan ahead. So yeah, just from a very serious standpoint, plan. And be ready for those kind of questions.
Right. No, that's good advice. That's good advice. Because you walk in there, you're thinking, man, I got my first issue done. I'm gonna sell this to that store. They're gonna love it. And they ask you, where's issue 2? And you're like, well, I have the script in my head. And, I still have to hire the artist, but I am gonna hire them, and they're gonna work on it. And it's like, I mean, listen, at the end of the day, these comic book shops are trying to stay in business. And much to your point, once you build that fan base, you got to keep feeding the monster. Otherwise, it's going to turn on you and they're gone. Just like they were on board, they'll hop off the train quick.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not even a question, right? Yeah, no,
exactly.
I agree.
100%.
I agree. Now, Paul, I have a bonus question for you.
Okay, I'm ready.
You're ready. All right. What's your favorite YouTube channel, and why is it Get Your Meds?
It is, of course, it's Get Your Meds. And I wasn't even paid to say this, people. I wasn't even paid. Oh, I would like to be. No, I'm joking. No, it's great. Of course, it's Get Your Meds, and I'm happy to be here, sir.
I want to thank you so much for coming on the show tonight. I've said it a few times now, but I mean it. I really, 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 I'm glad that you did this for me. And I'm going to leave you with homework. Right? Yes, homework. Okay. Now, this is the way this is going to work. So basically, I'm going to give you a prompt. The show is going to end. You're going to go about your day, go about your business. At some point today, tomorrow, next week, next month, who cares? You're going to use this prompt, sit down, maybe 10, 15 minutes, and write whether it's a story, short story, or maybe a scene in a comic. And if you feel confident that you love what you wrote and you're like, oh, this is kind of cool, email it to me and I'll post it on my website so that people can read what Haydes wrote based on the prompt that I'm going to give you now. So, because I've known you for quite some time now, we've actually established a nice bond, man. I consider you a friend. I consider you a friend. I know that you spend a lot of time doing this, okay? And that is awake. So the prompt today is going to be Sleepless Nights. That's your prompt, Sleepless Nights. So again, the show's over. You're going to sit down. You're going to write, whether it's 10, 15 minutes, and whatever you come up with in that amount of time. I don't want you to go crazy, but yeah, see what you come up with. See what you come up with. And for those watching, if you want to write a prompt with that in mind, then go for it. My email will be in the show notes as well. If you want to email me some of your stories based on that prompt, go for it, and I'll post it on my website. I think that'll be lots of fun. And thank you again, Haydes, for coming on. Do you have any final words for the people watching? Any advice that you may want to give our watchers about success and indie publishing and writing?
No, I would just say just remember, success is one line at a time. That's all I'll say.
Again, thank you so much, Haydes. We'll be talking, buddy. And that was my special guest, Mr. Paul Hayden from ASAP Imagination, talking about success. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Do you think that success starts one line at a time, or do you think there's more to it? Put it down in the comments below. Let me know what you think. Thank you so much for tuning in this week, guys. Thank you for the support. Don't forget, if you haven't done so yet, subscribe, like, share it with a fellow writer. Like I told you guys at the beginning, if it's somebody that's looking for advice or just likes to hear about writing, I'm going to have a lot of writers on the show coming up. So make sure you do subscribe, like it, and share it. Also, if you guys want to get in on that writing prompt, do so. My email address will be in the show notes. And if you guys are okay with me posting it on my website, which is getyourmedzinfo.com, I will do so there. Remember, the prompt tonight was Sleepless Nights. So make sure you check that out. Also, next week, my guest will be Mr. Dustin Brunel from Ethereal Comics. We're going to be talking about marketing and promotion as a comic book writer. So don't forget to tune in for that. And that's all I got for tonight. Thank you again for tuning in. And hey, listen, remember, keep writing. Peace.